Hi everyone, we continue to the next part of the chapter 7 animal tissues. I'm Norhazlin Jusoh. We continue on the glandular epithelium. So for the glandular epithelium, which means that the glands is made up from the epithelium tissues. So we have to know how to define what is a gland. So actually glands, which mean that the organs that release substance onto the skins or into a body cavity or into the interstitial fluids. This is what we call as the glands. The keyword here is the release substance. And then for the glandular epithelium, it can be divided into two types. Exocrine glands, which mean that this gland consisted of the ducts, and then another one is endocrine gland. The words endo here, which mean that by internally, which mean that there is no ducts compared to the exocrine. So basically the exocrine used to deliver the secretions or the substance to an external. So that's why the word is exo here. To the external or even to the internal surface. Okay, for example, saliva, milk, earwax, and also the digestive enzymes. And then for the endocrine, it used to secrete hormones. Rather than for the exocrine, it secretes the secretions or any substance. For the endocrines, it only secretes hormones, hormones that carried by the into the blood. Okay, so blood, because there is no duct, so it will carry by the blood. And then we look at on the exocrine first. For the exocrine glands, it can be divided into the unicellular, okay, and then by the multicellular. Looking on the unicellular, why is it as a unicellular? Which means that it consisted with the goblet cell that's scattered within the epithelial lining around the intestine and also at the respiratory tubes. Okay, look at here. Why the name is a goblet? So because the shape is like a goblet, and then for example, this is the nucleus. This is one cell of the epithelium cell, and then this is the nucleus. So which means that these cells is secreting substance or produce the secretions. So this is the around the secretion. So which means the secretion can goes out from here. Okay, so that's why this is become as the unicellular, one cell. This is what we call as the goblet cells. So the most product that can be produced is mucin, which means that it will produce the mucus. Okay, mucus, which means that mucin, earth, and water. Okay, of course it will involve the intestine and even the respiratory tube. Next we go to the multicellular. Okay, for the multicellular glands, it will involve the epithelium wall duct, okay, duct, and then a secretory, and become as a secretory unit. Okay, compared to the unicellular, of course this one, the word is multi here, which means that it consisted with more than one cells, a lot of cells to become as the exocrine gland. So for the exocrine gland, it can be divided into the simple duct and also for the compound duct. Simple duct and also the compound duct. So for the simple duct, it can be divided, become as a tubular, it's just like a tube, and then it will become as alveolar. Why it says as alveolar, like the alveolus, the shape, the end of the shape will become rounded, become rounded. So that's why it become as an alveolar. Okay, this one is more complex because it consists a lot of alveolar. It will become as a branch. And then for the compound duct, it consisted with the compound tubular. Okay, it just straight or flatten like a cisternae here. Okay, this one is called as a duct. Okay, and then for the alveolar, it can be have compound and also the compound tubular plus alveolar. Okay, this one, which means that it just consisted with the alveolar only, but in a complex structure. And then this one, it consisted with the alveolar and the tubular. So that's why the name as tubular alveolar. Okay, that's why it's the name compound here, which means that the combination. Next, we go to the example of the exocrine glands. Actually, a lot of glands can secrete the mucus. For example, the sweat glands, oil glands of the skin, salivary glands in our mouth, liver, and then the pancreas that produce the digestive enzyme, and also include the mammary gland that producing the milk. And then for the endocrine glands, as we have learned earlier, it's a ductless. There is no any ducts compared to the exocrine. Okay, then it used to release hormones into extracellular space, and then goes into the blood. So blood as the carrier, okay, to bring the hormones to the particular target cells or target organs or target site. And then hormone as a messenger molecules, and then of course enter the blood and then goes to the target cells. Okay, next we go to the connective tissues. Okay, for the connective tissues, look at on the function first. Function. Okay, function. So for the function, it's mainly to bind and support. Okay, to bind and support to other tissue, which means that it can support the epithelium tissues, it can support the muscle tissues, it can support also the nervous tissue. It's just example. And then contains a sparsely packed cell that's scattered or randomly throughout an extracellular matrix. Okay, so which means that the connective tissues, the connective cells, it can be packed in the extracellular matrix. Okay, how we can characterize, which means that, let's say, okay, in this figure or in this figure, we can say have the connective cells, for example, the fibroblasts or the collagen fibers. Okay, so these cells actually can secrete or separated, okay, by the ECM. Okay, the ECM is among here. So which means that the extracellular matrix, it derived from the connective tissues. Okay, which means that it can be coming or secreted from the cells among the connective tissues. Okay, so what does it mean, the extracellular matrix? The extracellular matrix, we can say, as extracellular part of the animal tissue that usually provide as a structural support, okay, to the cells. Okay, the ECM, we can say as a non-living materials, as a non-living material. For example, in our blood, the ECM, we can say as the plasma as the ECM. So how to classify the connective tissue? The connective tissue can be classified based on the few categories. Okay, become as the connective tissue proper, that will become two types. Okay, loose and dense. So which means that connective tissue proper, it can become as loose and dense. Okay, from the loose connective tissue proper, it can be three types. It will become as areolar, adipose, and reticular. Whereas for the connective tissue proper, dense, it will become as regular and irregular. Okay, and then the connective tissue also, it can be as specialized connective tissue. It will become as cartilage, bone, and blood. Okay, so for the cartilage, you can have three types: hyaline, fibrocartilage, and elastic. Whereas the bone, of course, we have to know already what is a bone, and then for the blood. Okay, so this is just the same thing to show the types of the connective tissues: loose connective tissues, okay, loose, dense, cartilage, bone, and the blood tissue. So we go in detail for one by one. So first look at on the loose connective tissue, which is the areola. Okay, how to describe? Okay, the loose connective tissue areola, it just consisted with the gel-like matrix. Okay, this is become as the ECM with all the three type fibers. Okay, that consisted with the elastic. Okay, elastic. Okay, also the collagen fibers and fibroblast. This is the fibroblast is used to develop, become as the collagen and also the elastic fibers. So the function is used for the reps and cushions organs, and also it can be play the role as inflammation, okay, for the immune response, and in order to hold and convey the tissue fluids. So where it can be found? Widely distributed under the epithelium of the body. Okay, for example, it will form the lamina propria. Okay, propria here, and then of the mucous membrane. So basically, it can be found around the respiratory tract. Of course, we can find the epithelial tissue, isn't it? And also around the gastrointestinal tract, and also at the urogenital tract. Okay, actually, all these three locations here, it consisted with the lamina propria. Okay, and then we go to the loose connective tissue, which is the adipose. Okay, how to describe the matrix as in areola, okay, but very sparse, and then it's quite closely packed with the adipocyte or the adipose cell. Okay, this is the nucleus of this is the whole here. This is one adipocyte, and then this is the nucleus of the adipose cells. Adipocyte, which means that the fat cell. Okay, a fat cell. Okay, the white color here, which means that it consisted with the fat. So we cannot stain or get this area become color because it consisted with the lipids or fat. And then it used to provide reserve food fuel, of course, because of the adipocyte or the fat cells, and also to insulate against any heat loss. Let's say it just under the or within the abdomen or under the skin, of course it will become insulation, and also for the support, okay, among or within the abdomen, and also protects the organs. Of course, we can find a lot in the breast. Okay. Next is a Okay, we continue to the loose connective tissue, okay, which is the reticular. Okay, the words of the reticular, which mean that reticulate, so which mean that it will form a network or a net. So, so that's why it called as a reticular. So it consisted with the network of the reticular fibers. Okay, this is the reticular fibers, and the black color here. Okay, it's just like a network, isn't it? Okay, a network. And then this typically loose ground substance. Ground substance is referred to the ECM or the extracellular matrix. And then it consisted also with the cells, which is the white blood cells or the lymphocytes. Okay, and this is the lymphocytes among the reticular fibers and also the mast cells. And then the function, fiber form a soft internal skeleton that can serve as a support for other cell types, including the white blood cells, mast cell, and also the macrophage, as a support or a skeleton, the fibers, okay, to support all the white blood cells. So that's why the location, it can be found at the lymphoid organ, especially at the lymph node, bone marrow, and the spleen. So this is the spleen. I think if you have a whole or eat the spleen of cow, you will know the spleen is quite spongy. Okay, how it will be spongy? Because it lots of the reticular fibers, and then a lot of blood because it consisted with a lot of the white blood cells. Okay, and then next we have the dense connective tissue. Okay, the dense here, which mean that pack, okay, pack or opaque or very high density, okay, compared to the previous is loose. So the name coming from the large number of the collagenous fibers, so that's why it will become dense. And then consisted with the two types, irregular and the regular. For the irregular, consisted with the collagen fibers in all direction, and then this make up as a bulk, especially at the dermis of the skin. Now you know the dermis of the skin here. This is the epidermis. Okay, and then here this is the dermis, skin, layer of skin. So in the dermis, it can be have a lots of irregular dense connective tissue, and also around the fiber capsule, around of the organs. Okay, for the regular, the collagen fibers, it just run in a common, and then it's quite it's just quite a parallel direction, and then used to resist tension. So that's why it can be found in the tendon and also the ligaments. So look at on details for the irregular first. So for the irregular, you can see as a function to withstand the tension in many directions, and that is it will provide the structural strength. Okay, because it is quite dense, so that's why it can be provide a structural strength. If we look at on the microscopic here, okay, this is the dermis of the skin. Okay, you can see this is the fibroblast that use to produce the collagen fibers, and then the collagen fibers is quite irregular or in all direction, around here, around here, around here. Okay, it's not a parallel compared to the regular, so that's why it called as irregular. It can be found also at the fibrous joint or joint capsule. You can see the pink color here. This is can be found the irregular dense connective tissue. And then next is for the regular. You can see consisted with the parallel collagen. This is the collagen fibers. Okay, the collagen fibers. You can see how it just located very inline or parallel. Okay, it's quite arranged, isn't it? So that's why it's called as irregular. It's called as regular. And then this is the fibroblast, also same, to produce the collagen fiber. So the function, attach muscles to the bones, okay, which means that you can attach the muscle between with the bone, so that's what it's called as a tendon, okay, tendon. And then attach bone to bones, so which means that for the ligaments, okay, here, and also it can be found at any joints, of course, for the regular connective, dense connective tissue. Then we go to the cartilage. So the cartilage is quite a specialized connective tissue. It has abundance also with the collagenous fibers embedded in a rubbery matrix. Okay, rubbery matrix. And then the rubbery become as the ECM, and then used to support and as a cushion's bone. So there are three types. First, hyaline cartilage, elastic, and also the fibrous cartilage. So we look at in details for one by one. For the hyaline cartilage, have a large portion of the protein fibers, and predominantly by the collagen. Okay, you look at on the microscopic of the trachea here, you can see at the trachea is quite it consisted with the cartilage, but especially for the hyaline. And then it consisted with the matrix. Here, this is the matrix. And then here this is the chondrocytes, or the cartilage cells that located in the lacuna. Lacuna actually where we can be found the cells of cartilage. Okay, and then the function to support and reinforce, and also to resist any compressive stress. Okay, and then also can be found the costal cartilage around the sternum here. Okay, sternum here, around the rib cage here. This is the sternum, and then this is the rib cage. In between the sternum and also the rib cage, and there is a cartilage here. Okay, so that's why the doctors can do the CPR on the patient by pressing around the here. Okay, because around here it consisted with the costal cartilage. Okay, and then it can have also around the nose. Okay, trachea of course, and also at the larynx. And then we go to the next elastic cartilage. Okay, has a dark staining elastic fibers that embedded in the ground substance, and the ground substance is referred to the ECM here. Okay, so it consisted with the elastic fibers. This is the elastic fibers, and then here this is the lacuna that consisted with the chondrocyte. So that's why it say as it's quite similar to the hyaline cartilage, but more elastic fibers in the matrix. So it can used to maintain the shape of the structure and allow the flexibility. So that's why it can be found at the external ear around the pinna. Okay, so that's how we can pull our pinna, isn't it? Okay, and also at the epiglottis. Then next is a fibrous cartilage. This one contains fine fibers arranged in layered. Arranged in layered. You look at here, it also consisted with the lacuna. Okay, this is the lacuna that consisted with the chondrocytes or the cells of the cartilage, and then it doesn't have the elastic, but it has the collagen fibers. It has the collagen fibers. So this is example at the vertebral disc, in the intervertebral disc. Okay, around here. This is the it can be found the fibrocartilage. And also around the knee joint, and also at the pubic symphysis. And the function as a tensile strength with the ability to absorb the compressive shock. So that's why we can around our backbone or the vertebral bones. Okay, even though it's weak, once we already falling or fall down, okay, we still can save, isn't it? Or the bone is not rupture drastically, okay, because we have the intervertebral disc become as the compressive or absorb the compressive shock. Okay, next we go to the bone, which is the specialized connective tissue. It consisted with hard characteristic, and then calcified matrix, which means that lots of the calcium ions, and then consisted with also with the collagen fibers, and then it consisted with the cells that develop, okay, the bone, which is what we call as the osteocytes. Okay, here, okay, in the lacuna, same as the cartilage, and then it's quite well, very well vascularized, which means that it consisted with lots of the blood vessels, and then the function, of course, for the support, okay, protects, and then because it's quite mean for our skeleton, isn't it? Most of the vertebrates, and then it stores the calcium, and then or some of other minerals, and then the blood cell formation, actually we can call as the process of hematopoiesis that occur in the bone marrow. Okay, so the bone, if we look at on the microscopic structure, it's quite consisted with the repeating units, and this is what we call as the osteons or the Haversian system. So one here, okay, the whole here we call as the osteon or the Haversian system. So each of the osteon, it just consisted or layers with the mineralized matrix that have a place around the central canal. Here, this is the central canal. Around here, let's say this is one osteon, and then coming from here, it just derived with the mineralized matrix. And then for the bone cells, for the sites, it used to secrete osteocytes. It used to secrete or maintain the matrix of the bones. Okay, it needs to reactivate it and become osteoblast to form the new bones. And then, of course, as I already mentioned, located at the lacunae. And then the cell extension we can call as a canaliculi. Okay, look at here. This is the extension. Extension here, this is the canaliculi. And then here, this is one lacuna. And then the osteoblasts become less active, okay, when they become mature and then known as the osteocytes. So which means that if the bone need to reform a new bone or a new structure of the bones, it needs to become as the osteoblast. Okay, once it become mature, it will become as the osteocytes. Both consisted in the lacuna. Okay, and then we go to the blood. Okay, for the blood, the function is quite different compared to the other connective tissue, but it still have the extracellular matrix. So the extracellular matrix for the blood, which is the plasma. The plasma, it just consisted with the non-living materials, with the water, okay, salts, and also a variety of the dissolved proteins. And then it's about 90% of the blood plasma consisted with the water as the solvent and become as the main transportation medium. Okay, it can be for the gases and also the other nutrients and even the hormones. And then the location of the blood, of course, in the blood vessels, either it can be in the arteries, veins, and also the capillaries. Okay, let's say we spin or centrifuge, or we just centrifuge the blood in the test tube. Okay, we can separate the layer of the plasma and even the blood vessels. And the blood vessel at the bottom, because it's quite dense compared to the plasma. Plasma is you can say as the solvent or the ECM. So the blood cells, of course, it will consisted with the red blood cells, white blood cells, okay, platelets, and then this is example when we do the blood smear. The function of the blood, we can go briefly to supply of the nutrients, and then that dissolve in the blood and bound to the plasma proteins, and also as a messenger functions, including the transportation of the hormones, especially the hormone that's secreted from the endocrine glands. And then it also can use for the regulation of the body pH. Okay, so that's why we can regulate the core body, also the core body temperature, even though we have the fever. Okay, we go briefly for the cellular components in the plasma of the blood. Okay, it consisted with the erythrocyte or the RBC, the main function to transport the oxygen. And then for the leukocyte or for the white blood cells, it used for the defense against the virus or any microorganism or any foreign substance. And then for the platelets, this is actually the cell fragments that used for the blood clotting. And then the blood cells actually is made up in the bone marrow, as I already mentioned, through the process, or you can say as a hemopoiesis or hematopoiesis. And then we go to the next type of the muscle tissue, which is the muscle, next type of the animal tissue, which is the muscle tissue. So for the muscle tissue, the major function